Order at 7:04 p.m. We are in session, legislative session. And if you'll give me a moment to find my agenda. The first item on the agenda, of course, is the Pledge of Allegiance. So let's please stand if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence or a moment of silent prayer. And we certainly have plenty to think about and pray about for both of those. Thank you. Please be seated. Members of the council, need to shrink the main Zoom window here. You have an agenda before you. Are any amendments to that agenda required?
Two things, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
One being at the start of the meeting, and the other being, and if the screen can hold still for a second, okay. And one being something that you had sent earlier on, but to start with the start of the meeting, as to the events at the top, where you have Senator Pinsky and you have two proclamations. Are we doing those in that order, or are you doing the proclamations prior to the senator?
I was planning on letting the senator speak to us first and get on with his evening should he choose to.
Okay. And the other item was the what you had brought up about the county bill that you thought we needed to discuss. Did we want to do that under new business or?
That was my thought, was that we should discuss it under new business.
Okay.
And I'll be bringing up one other item under new business, which is the work session schedule for next week. Because I'll be in MML, but we can discuss that under new business.
Okay.
So there's still no amendments. Those will just be brought up under new business. Are there any amendments or are there any conflicts of interest that any members have with items on the agenda?
I have none.
Hearing silence, I will.
I have none.
Very good. I will assume that we're good. Are there any public comments on the agenda? Very good. Well, then let's may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as introduced.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there any discussion? Hearing none and not seeing any members of the public in the list, then I will move directly to a vote. Roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia is absent. Councilmember Mayers is absent. And I abstain. The motion passes 3-0-1. Excuse me. So that brings us to the presentations and Senator Pinsky. Senator Pinsky, you have the floor. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the invitation to join the council. Hello, council members. And I'll try to keep this tight and brief and take a couple questions if the time allows us. I also want to get out of the way so you can do your normal traditional work that you have to take on. And with that in mind, I as I usually do, I want to thank all of you for stepping up and putting your time with little recompense to work for the town. All of you make my life easier, dealing with immediate day-to-day situations in your town. You get no credit, but you work very hard, and that goes for the council members and the town staff. And so I don't forget at the back end, if you or your constituents do have state problems with an agency, whether it be motor vehicles or pensions, whatever it might be, they should feel free to call my office and talk to Susan or Ian in my office. And we can help in those regards. So if you do get calls that you can't handle or out of your purview, please feel free to contact my office. So that being said, let me just briefly talk about what transpired the session that ended about 7 or 8 weeks ago. It was very productive. It was the 4th year in a 4-year session. Now the voters will decide which of the state legislators go back. I always try to remind people that whether it's a House of Delegates seat or Senate seat, we do not own them. They are not ours. We are there temporarily for 4 years. It's up to the voters to decide who to send back and to hold us accountable, essentially. If they don't like the job people have done and they think it's time for a change, they should make those changes. If they're happy with the work people have done, they should retain them. But that's why we have elections. And the whole legislature is up, as well as statewide offices, governor, attorney general, comptroller. So, and a lot of county offices as well. Let me talk about some of the key issues that came up this session and what happened. And I think a number of them do affect all of our constituents. After a number of years, we passed a paid family leave. You know, some people with their employment get paid leave for childbirth or recuperation or long-term illness. While the federal law protects you and your job for 6 weeks, it doesn't necessarily mean it gets paid. And so for the first time in Maryland's history, we passed a paid family leave. Now, to be frank with you, it'll be contributory from the employer and the employee, and that dollar has not been set. But it essentially is insurance. So if you have a child or recuperating or adoption, actually, you can have paid leave from your job. And we actually, from the floor of the Senate, extended it to 12 weeks. So if you not only are recuperating from childbirth, but have a serious illness in that year, there can be an additional 6 weeks. Now, obviously, you have to show proof and documentation of that. But for the first time, and it's going to take about 12 to 18 months to get this going, it'll be provide more security for all working families and people in the state of Maryland. So it's a major gain. A few states have done it, many have not. So I'm pretty pleased. And it was a strong grassroots effort by labor unions, working families, and other groups to get this accomplished. You know, during the COVID for 2 years, many people wanted to be outside, and our state parks were used like they'd never been before, all over the state. And people realized that the staffing was not adequate, the upkeep and maintenance was not adequate. So we made a major effort to do that upgrade and invest millions and millions of dollars over the next 5 years to add staff, to add maintenance, to expand some of the parks. It's pretty exciting for those of you who do get to go outdoors, whether it's in Baltimore County or on the Eastern Shore, Western Mountains. We think it's a major gain. And in some ways, I hate to say it was because of COVID, but it brought out the need for the parks and the usage of the parks, and people who had never used parks before, particularly many of our working poor who needed to get outside, utilize the parks. So we want to build on that momentum, improve our parks, expand our parks, and make it they're more accessible to everybody, no matter what zip code people live in. Look, you know, we followed what's been happening with reproductive rights in the Supreme Court and the leaked decision. Later this month, we'll hopefully get the final decision. Maryland moved in the other direction from what we expect the Supreme Court to do. We are expanding access to reproductive rights. In the past, only gynecologists and some other doctors could perform abortions. We're not saying we want to encourage them, but we want to have that available because it's up to women of the state and their partner, if they choose to include them in that decision, to be able to make that decision and have that health care right if they choose to do that. We said that not only is there a need in Maryland as it stands now, but we may in fact be getting visits from people from out of state where it's found to be illegal. So we're expanding the right to physicians assistants, nurse practitioners, and some other groups after extensive training. So we have access. On the Eastern Shore, there are no people right now who provide it. So you have to go to Baltimore. So the access question for working families who are not in the Baltimore-Washington corridor is much more challenging and difficult. And just because you live in a rural area shouldn't mean you're excluded from getting that service. It's already enshrined in law, the ability to pursue that choice if someone so chooses. We just want to make it accessible to all people, and probably a growing way that we're going to see in future time. I know we have some educators here involved in the education field. We passed the Blueprint for Maryland's Future at the Kerwin Commission a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, it came right as COVID hit, and COVID really created a major problem for children, for teachers and parents, set things back. We thought young people were going to be at a certain level, and COVID pushed that back. There was a lot of learning loss. So this 10-year phase-in of 30 or 40 recommendations to improve the quality of education and instruction and increase the resources basically has been slowed because of first trying to catch up our students who've lost to COVID. On top of that, as you, I'm sure know, the governor vetoed the bill and then held back some money. So what we thought would be a 10 or 11 year phase-in is going to end up being a 11 or 12 or 13-year phase-in. However, because of the revenue projection for this year, we had funded fully funded the state section of the first 5 years of the 10-year phase-in. Because of the revenue this past year, we were able to put another $800 million to make sure that the state contribution for Kerwin would be in place for the next 10 years. So that's pretty exciting that we are not just talking about making these changes, we're going to fully fund them. And without going through what this Kerwin proposal was, it changes the paradigm in our state. It includes wraparound services and community schools. It has tutoring. It's going to introduce higher standards. It's going to improve the workforce, but it's also going to have accountability. The local jurisdictions are going to have to implement these recommendations. And if they choose not to, they're not going to get some of these funds. It's going to be very simple. It's not like we're going to give them money and say, free to be you and me. We think the recommendations in the law have been tested and proven internationally, not just nationally, internationally. So we think they're good ones. The actual details will be up to the locals, but they have to follow the framework and the recommendations or the requirements of the law, and money will follow with that. Over 11 years, it's close to $4 billion of state and local money. Ghost guns, you may have read about that last week. These are the guns that can be made through 3D, that are plastic, that are wood, that don't have ID numbers on them, that can be traced. We prohibit that from the buying or selling of homemade guns and guns without serial numbers. Is it the answer? No. Is it a step towards what we need to do? Absolutely. As you're following Congress, U.S. Senate, there's a bipartisan effort, red flag and a few other things. I think there's no reason to have automatic weapons or semi-automatic weapons. Hunters don't use them. I think the only way we're going to solve this problem is to stop producing them. We can shift the age from 18 to 21 or the waiting time, but as long as we have these weapons, we're going to have people dying, and it's unfortunate, it's sad. We haven't had what happened in Texas and Uvalde here in Prince George's County. But every day we wake up afraid to read the paper of what the next mass shooting is going to be. So I will support any bill that removes AR-15s or anything like that. We had that in law for 10 years, 1994 to 2004 in this country. There's no reason we couldn't stop that now. And it shouldn't just be of having them. We shouldn't allow them to be produced or the bullets that fill them because they're already on the street. But it's a good law. It's a step forward. We did have some extra money and, no one likes to pay taxes. Nobody, particularly seniors and people on fixed income. But as I shared with some social friends Saturday night, if you don't raise revenue, you don't build roads, you don't build schools, you don't provide the service that people take for granted. When the current governor came into office, the first thing he did, he lowered the tolls on bridges. But he never explained to people that there'd be less money coming in to fix those very same bridges and our roads. You can only pander so long until you start to see a deterioration in public services. Again, none of us like to pay taxes. So there was some extra money. So there's going to be, for seniors over 65, an individual with making less than 100,000 or a family making less than 150,000, $1,000 tax credit. So it's a small savings, but for people on fixed income, hopefully that will help them to some degree. Let me mention one other bill, two other bills, and then we'll talk about some projects. As some of you may have read, we passed one of the strongest bills to fight climate change in the country. I was pleased and proud to be the lead sponsor and the floor leader of that bill. It calls for a 60% reduction in greenhouse gas by 2031, which is the strongest requirement in the country. It also says that large buildings of 35,000 square feet have to reduce their greenhouse gas by 20% by 2030. So it does a lot of things. It transforms the state fleet from traditional gas engines to electric vehicles or zero emission vehicles as they hit their life cycle. If we get the federal money, which was in the infrastructure bill, we're going to do a changeover of all school buses. The emissions and the asthma in children is a major problem. We set up a green bank to leverage private money. And one thing that I'm very excited about, we set up an urban climate corps to hire young people between, 17 and 23 to work for a year at $15 an hour, what's considered a living wage, but what we think is the kind of wage young people have to start with at least, to work in urban areas, whether it's planting trees or putting in energy efficiency requirements, whatever it might be. About 8 years ago, we started one on the Chesapeake Bay, the Chesapeake Climate Corps. And that was more in the rural areas, the bay and the rivers. But we think because so many disproportionately affected people have not had some of those benefits, this will be targeted to places like Baltimore, Prince George's County, some of the poorer counties on the Eastern Shore. So we think it's exciting to hire young people of color, to get them fighting for the environment in their own communities and maybe making a career of it. So final bill, let me mention, and then I'll talk about project very quickly. We passed an election bill, some election reform efforts. And one of the things the bill did was to say that if someone submitted a ballot and forgot to sign the affidavit, that the Board of Elections could reach out and contact that person to sign it. It also would allow them to start what's called curing 8 days before the election and start to not tabulate, but to collect and get them ready for tabulation, which takes many, many, many hours. And unfortunately, the governor vetoed the bill, which means if there's a close race, they might not know on election night who wins. It might take another week. This is something we did 2 years ago in the primary and the general. It was a smart reform. It's thoughtful. It's under close scrutiny, but unfortunately, the governor vetoed it. So we're still hoping we can run a smooth, effective election, although no one is happy with the summer date for the primary, July 19th. That was the result of the court suits on redistricting. Let me end with this, and this is happy news for Riverdale. We have bond bills. So we get money from the state to distribute to our districts, particularly to nonprofits, local entities, local municipalities. And we had a fair amount of money this year. And one of the projects we were able to fund, close to $1 million, is the Queensbury junction with the bike path, the trolley trail. I know that's been on your agenda for a while. It's going to be costly. We know any kind of road reshifting or sidewalking is not cheap. So we were able to get that money for Riverdale Park. Obviously, we had ongoing conversations with the mayor and the town. So we're very happy for that. There's also some money for sidewalk improvements related to the Purple Line, which we got in addition to the normal Purple Line funding, although that's another story that has taken so long that I won't get into that tonight. And even to your local communities, you know, in Hydeville, we're going to continue to fund and finish funding their teen center and help their new police department. In Greenbelt, we have the trail leading to Metro Stop and a new inclusive playground. So and a new bridge over the stream in University Park. So look, we don't get the money. We want to distribute to areas of need that need it in the community. So we did that. It was a few $1 million. So we're pretty excited about that. And hopefully you can use it. And we've tried to fund the town over the years in terms of purchases in the house next to the town hall, et cetera, although you haven't been there very much. So let me stop there. And again, I want to thank you for your support and cooperation. It was pretty productive. You know, I felt really good after this session, not just because a number of my bills passed, but I think we really did things to improve the quality of life for the people of Maryland. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if you want to have a few questions, fine. If you need to go into your meeting, that's fine. I know you have lots of work to do.
Thank you, Senator. And I'll just say that maybe it's just where I am or in my career as a politician, but I felt like this was a really energized, really important, really exciting legislative session. And I was tired at the end of it. I don't know how you and the rest of our delegation held up with all the meetings and so on. I was just sort of trying to monitor it from afar. And we in the town are very appreciative of the money for, as I call it, replumbing our town center. That's been a problem, as you said, for years, maybe decades. And it's nice that we can now have the resources that we can address that. And we are going to be moving forward on it very quickly in the new fiscal year as soon as we can. And I'll just finally say that that climate change bill, I honestly, personally believe is one of the most important pieces of legislation that passed during this session. That's something that really threatens all of us, threatens the entire state. And you know, we have suffered at the hands of climate change with some of the abnormal weather events. You know, 2 500-year storms over the course of 5 years, and so very appreciative that the state is moving so aggressively on that. And thank you for your leadership on that. Very appreciated.
Thank you, Alan.
Looks like there's a couple of council members who have questions or comments for you. I'll start with Councilmember Smith from Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Senator Pinsky. First, want to say thank you for the funding for our town center at the heart of Ward 1. We're really excited to get to work on that project. I know just this week, I've heard from several constituents about several different issues with our town center, be it the vehicular traffic patterns, the trolley trail itself and whatnot. And we're really excited about getting that going. So I want to thank you for that, first of all. And then just a couple questions on the Mark Camden line that stops in Riverdale Park at Riverdale Town Center in Ward 1. I no longer take that train in and out of DC for work, but I used to. And I know that there are some limited service trains on the Camden line that run straight through our town, but don't stop in Riverdale. We have at Town Center itself about 100 new housing units coming in right there, a couple hundred more coming in at Riverdale Park Station, which that is the immediate area, but doesn't even account for the hopefully creating a greenway from Edmonston into Riverdale Park so that they have pedestrian access to the MARC station, and of course, further housing development in the Kenworth Avenue corridor there coming along with the Purple Line. So I'm curious how hard would it be to get those limited service trains to start making that stop in Riverdale? We're not talking about adding a whole new train, just adding, 2 or 3 minutes to the schedule each way, so that we can, efficiently get our folks to and from work every day that work downtown.
No, thank you, Richard. Yeah, there's another constituent who'll go unnamed who works in Baltimore, who said, if he doesn't leave by 6 or 6:30, he's stuck. And
Yeah,
so-
when I was coming back from DC, it was like if you miss the 5:15 train, you're having a drink at the bar in Union Station till 7:30. So
well, and in Baltimore, you can't come home. You have to wait on the next day. You have to stay at a hotel.
exactly.
So, look, the mass transit in our state, I won't say it's abysmal. It's well intended. We need a whole paradigm shift on it. I mean, and I don't want to minimize that one train. We need to expand mass transit trains to get from Baltimore to Washington, from Frederick in West Virginia down to DC. The 270. There's no reason there can't be a dedicated bus lane that can get someone from Rockville to downtown in 20 or 25 minutes. The other problem, and not to make it too statewide, is Waldorf. Coming in from Charles County is horrendous. And if they had either a light rail or dedicated bus lanes to get to Suitland, these who can get into town in a reasonable time. It has not been a priority of this administration, let me be frank. So that's why elections are important. This current governor has wanted to put more cars on the road. So they've let things like the trains, just fall away. And I think we didn't take on mass transit in the climate bill because it creates even more enemies. But this next term, if I'm sent back, I'm going to spend more time on transportation because it's unfortunate. We need to get people out of their cars. We have to make it comfortable and easy. I mean, even having free Starbucks coffee. I mean, we need to get people to use mass transit and get out of their cars. And I think there are ways to do it. There were a few efforts this past session, but it's not enough. So I'm going to work on that, Richard, and I'll follow up and talk to you about some of the quick fixes. But look, there's no reason, if we could convince people to go between Baltimore and Washington, it shouldn't stop at 6 or 6:30. It should go to 9 or 10. For a couple of years when we didn't have a baseball team, the Orioles, it would go till the end of the Orioles game, right? Because people were going up to Baltimore. I mean, we should encourage people, if they want to work in Baltimore and live in Riverdale Park or in Lanham or in University Park, we need to make that easy. And so far we haven't. And look, there are more people using the bike trail to go to work in DC. Now, obviously with COVID, that's cut back, but I would run into more and more people who get on their bike and they can take the trolley trail all the way into Southwestern to DC instead of getting in a car, and not to make too much of a segue, but later this month, the final leg of the trolley trail, which I've been working on for 6 years, is going to begin construction. So it won't end at Franklin's, but it'll go to under Armentrout, and it'll connect at Alternate 1. So those in Riverdale Park can take the trail on the Northeast branch and then loop back up at Armentrout and come to Franklin's for a cold one, if you will, and then do a full loop. So we need to work on it, Richard, and I'm more than happy to take suggestions in terms of what some of the best fixes are.
Well, you're lucky. I am a pretty big mass transit nerd, and I agree with your assessments all around there, and happy to have that conversations with you. But just as we look forward, I think yes, and to everything you said, but it seems like we don't need that much train to get or change to get the one train on the Camden line to stop one more time right now.
Right.
And we can handle all that other stuff as well.
Yeah.
Another question I had for you are about the sidewalks along Route 1 in Ward 1, which, as you know, are state maintained, and we don't really have much we can do there. I know you mentioned money for sidewalks around the Purple Line. I'm guessing Route 1 is a little bit out of that zone for that, but our sidewalks along Route 1 particularly, if you have a stroller or if you are mobility impaired, they are essentially impassable. You know, they may not be more than 24 inches wide. There's if they are still there and not crumbling apart, there's power poles right in the middle of the sidewalk. And that is, of course, as you know, one of the major, if not the biggest thoroughfare in our area. So I would really hope that we can do something to get some funding to and some increased attention in the maintenance on that area, especially as we have a lot of an aging population in Ward 1, particularly with the apartment building on Oglethorpe, which is not in Ward 1 or Riverdale Park, but is part of our community, and other folks around there. So is there,
Richard, this is more on the west side of Route 1, correct?
I mean, it's where I'm at, it's on the east and west side. The
Okay.
sidewalks are horrendous.
Okay.
Um,
Let's follow up on that one
Okay.
offline, and I'll make sure to talk to my staff on that. So either call or email my office so I can do some follow-up.
sure, I'll follow up.
I mean, I also want to be frank, everyone and their mother and father is wants sidewalk replacement, and the queue at state highways is pretty damn long. But I understand it. It's my community too. I live right across the street, so I understand.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate that, but everybody and their mother didn't elect me. The residents of Ward 1 didn't. As an elected official, I'm sure you can appreciate and understand that.
That was
I'm not trying to
that was not
sharpshoot
meant to
you
be
on that, but-
dismissive. I didn't mean to be dismissive.
no, I didn't take it as dismissive. It's just my way of making a joke, which
Right.
don't often land. Another thing I had a question about was mobile sports betting in Maryland. That date keeps getting pushed back for that launching. Do we have, it was at first before the football season and now it's before the end of the football season. Is there any movement on that?
I'd have to check, Rich. I've no investigation, no right to speak. It has not been an issue I've spent a lot of my time on. I know it's important to numbers of people. I can check. I don't have a simple answer for you. I don't know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I can follow up. And then just the last thing I'll say is I think the climate legislation that our state passed is amazing. It's incredible. We are a leader in the nation for the measures we're taking to address climate change. But I think you'll agree with me, but when I say that it's not enough. We don't have till 2030. We don't have till 2045. There are things that we need to do above and beyond that great bill, that great piece of legislation that we need to get started doing now. Like I say, I just from knowing you, I think you agree, and I see your head nodding there. So I would just encourage you and your colleagues in the legislature to get even more bold in the next session.
Well, thank you. And for those who followed it very carefully, we had another part in the bill that would have said going forward, all new construction would not be based on gas or oil. It would be based on electric wires. In other words, heat pumps. Because once you build pipes, you got to keep running stuff through them, or else it becomes a stranded cost. And we think most future technology will be, if it's clean energy, it's going to come through an electric line, not through a pipe. And so, but unfortunately, I ran up against Pepco, BG&E, and Washington Gas Light. And they were formidable, and between them probably about 15 lobbyists, and talked about how dangerous it'll be and what a threat to our society. Even though New York City has passed a similar law, no state has done it, I think, yet. We would have been the first. So that was in the original bill. But, a lot of my colleagues got nervous. They were afraid election year and money being spent to stop them. It would have been very important. It would have been record setting. To get a bill passed, sometimes we had to compromise, but you're absolutely right. We have to change how we do business. We've taken care of low hanging fruit. Now we got to make some serious changes. And again, another is transportation. I mean, that's the first or second leading emitter. And we just have to do, New York City's had a subway system for 70 years and millions of people use it. There's no reason the rest of the country couldn't be doing things similarly. So thank you. I think, Aaron, are you next? I don't know.
Aaron is next. Thank you, Councilmember Smith, for those questions.
Thank you, Senator Penske. I didn't nearly have the depth of questions that Councilmember Smith had. I wanted to say thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to sit on your scholarship committee a few weeks ago and really reward some hardworking students in Prince George's County. That's where I've encountered you at, is arguing on behalf of education for the county and the state. And you've done remarkable work on behalf of our teachers and students. And I just wanted to say thank you. It's just remarkable getting to participate in government at this level, where in District 22, our representatives visit us in our council meetings, and they tell us about the incredible things that they're doing for things like education or women's reproductive health or ghost guns. Checking out, my wife and I have just been looking at where our family lives, and Maryland, according to Gabrielle Gifford's website, is an A- when it comes to comprehensive, sensible gun control. And to hear you advocate on behalf of control of AR-15s and those weapons of mass war is just, for the teacher in me, for the father in me, it is absolutely remarkable to live where it is that we do. I see people complaining about politics nationwide, and I truly feel represented in this community. So all I wanted to do was say thank you for your public service. Thank you for being here tonight. And I look forward to building upon this relationship and fighting the good fight in the state of Maryland. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Aaron. And, and back to Richard, I have no problem, no qualms pushing the envelope. We have to do a hell of a lot more. But I have the visionary vision of how things should be, but also have to have a little pragmatism to make some of the smaller steps. And about 6 years ago, we had a bill on school safety after a young woman was killed in Southern Maryland at a school shooting. And, there's this big bill of making sure police could respond within 5 minutes and metal detectors. And, I ended up voting against it because there was no investment in being proactive. There was no money for counselors, or social workers for kids who are at risk. I mean, we're dealing with the repercussions, not with the symptoms, not with the causes, and that is a problem for me. In Baltimore, 345 murders every year, whatever the number is. We're not getting to the root cause. I mean, we have to do better, and I'm going to keep pushing the legislature if I have to be the conscience of the legislature. We have to go to the root problems, and it takes a little longer to get to that. Look, poverty, inequality, alienation, they're big issues. But we have to take them on. We can't ignore them, or we're going to keep trying to, we're going to be on this wheel spinning like the mouse, never making progress. So we are making progress, but I think we have to push harder. And I appreciate, I do this because of people like you folks, all of you. If there weren't people who cared for their community, and I could look around and say there are people who want me to do what I'm doing and giving voice to their desires and needs in Annapolis, I wouldn't be doing this. So that's why I do it. So thank you.
And I'm coming to the end of my 20th year in education, 19th in Fairfax County in Virginia. And I said, I look behind you and I see a book on Frederick Douglass, and I currently teach in a state where teaching Frederick Douglass might be inferred to be teaching critical race theory. And with all of my might, I want to come back to teach in the state of Maryland. It's not financially responsible for me to do that at this point. And I want to continue to have dialogues along those paths, because I want to teach in a state that recognizes history. I want to teach in a state where, Frederick Douglass was born enslaved and escaped. And I can teach that knowing that I'm not going to be attacked because some parent is over listening or hearing from students. It's just asinine what's going on in education right now concerning violence in schools, concerning what it is that we're teaching. And I want to help you, and I want to help the state become at the forefront of bringing teachers into this state to teach Black history the way that it should be taught.
Thank you, Aaron. Are there any members of the public who have questions for Senator Pinsky? Are there any members of the public? Period. I don't see anyone except staff and us. So, Senator, I think you are off the hook. Thank you again for coming to speak with us. And,
Thank you.
And assuming that you are brought back to the legislature, please always reach out if you need our assistance, and we will reach out to you if we need yours. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye. Have a good night.
Bye. Okay, I have to find my agenda now. Next is a proclamation in recognition of Juneteenth. So I will start that. First in English. Whereas on January 1st, proclamation in recognition of Juneteenth. Whereas on January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, providing that all persons held as slaves, quote, shall be thenceforward and forever free. And whereas on June 19th, 1865, almost 2.5 years later, Major General Condon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced the end of both the Civil War and slavery. And whereas Juneteenth, also called Emancipation Day, or Juneteenth Independence Day, commemorates the end of slavery in the United States and is observed annually on June 19th. And whereas the mayor and council are proud to join with town residents, business owners, visitors, and employees, along with individuals and communities throughout the country in commemorating Juneteenth. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park firmly believes that now more than ever, Black History must be taught, discussed, and celebrated throughout the year. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park is committed to racial justice and equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to supporting policies, programs, and initiatives that aim to eradicate systemic racism and undo its historical damage. And whereas our town's cultural diversity enriches our community, and Black heritage is an inseparable part of that enrichment, as it weaves throughout the history, profoundly influencing every aspect of life. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Riverdale Park Mayor and Council call on all town residents, businesses, employees, and indeed all people throughout the United States to recognize, commemorate, and celebrate Juneteenth with appropriate ceremonies, activities, reflections, actions, and programs. Y ahora en español, una proclamación en reconocimiento de Juneteenth, por cuanto el 1 de enero en 1863, Abraham Lincoln firmó la Proclamación de Emancipación, disponiendo que todas las personas mantenidas como esclavas serán entonces en adelante y para siempre libres, y por cuanto el 19 de junio en 1865, casi de 2 años y medio después, el mayor general Gordon Granger llegó a Galveston, Texas, y anunció el fin de la guerra civil y la esclavitud. Y por cuanto Juneteenth, también llamado Día de la Emancipación o Día de la Independencia de Juneteenth, conmemora el fin de la esclavitud en los Estados Unidos y se observa anualmente en el 19 de junio, y por cuanto el alcalde y el consejo se enorgullecen de unirse a los residentes de la ciudad, dueños de negocios, visitantes y empleados, junto con personas y comunidades de todo el país para conmemorar Juneteenth. Y por cuanto la ciudad de Riverdale Park cree firmemente que ahora más que nunca la historia afroamericana debe enseñarse, discutirse y celebrarse durante todo el año. Y por cuanto la ciudad de Riverdale Park está comprometida con la justicia racial y la equidad, la diversidad y la inclusión, y con el apoyo de políticas, programas e iniciativas que tienen como objetivo erradicar el racismo sistémico y deshacer su daño histórico. Y por cuanto la diversidad cultural de nuestra ciudad enriquece a nuestra comunidad y la herencia afroamericana es una parte inseparable de ese enriquecimiento a medida que se teje a lo largo de nuestra historia, influyendo profundamente en todos los aspectos de la vida. Ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que el alcalde y el Consejo Municipal de Riverdale Park exhortan a todos los residentes, negocios, empleados y de hecho a todas las personas en los Estados Unidos a reconocer, conmemorar y celebrar Juneteenth con ceremonias apropiadas, actividades, reflexiones, acciones y programas. Muchas gracias. Next on the agenda is a proclamation in recognition of LGBTQ+ Pride Month 2022. Whereas the town of Riverdale Park Mayor and Council are honored to join with town residents, business owners, visitors, and employees, along with the individuals and communities throughout the country, and celebrating June as LGBTQ+ Pride Month, Pride. And whereas Pride is a time to recall the adversity that the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus community has and continues to endure, and to rejoice in the triumphs, big and small, of the individuals who have bravely fought and continue to fight for full equality. And whereas the town recognizes the resilience and determination of the many individuals who are fighting to live freely and authentically, and in doing so, they are opening hearts and minds and laying the foundation for a more just and equitable world and giving hope to others. And whereas the town also recognizes that more work is needed, that LGBTQ+ individuals, especially youth who defy sex or gender norms, face bullying and harassment and are at a disproportionate risk of self-harm and death by suicide, that there is continued violence against transgender women of color, and that the LGBTQ+ elders are now facing a new challenge of isolation as they work to age with dignity. And whereas it is important and necessary that we remind the LGBTQ+ community that they are loved and cherished. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park celebrates the rich diversity of its residents and reaffirms the self-worth and dignity of our LGBTQ+ community members, recommitting the town's values of diversity and inclusion. And whereas our LGBTQ+ neighbors are a diverse, engaged, and vital part of our town, contributing to all aspects of town life as active and visible contributors and leaders, making Riverdale Park a stronger and more vibrant community. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park is a welcoming, caring, and safe community, a place where its residents strive to make an exceptional, diverse, and inclusive place for all to live, learn, work, play, raise a family, and age. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Riverdale Park Mayor and Council do hereby proclaim June as LGBTQ+ Pride Month and call on everyone in our community to observe June as LGBTQ+ Pride Month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Y ahora en español, and I hope I will not stumble over the letters too much. LGBTQ plus LGBTQ más Pride 2022. Considerando que el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Riverdale Park tienen el honor de unirse a los residentes de la ciudad, a los propietarios de negocios, a los visitantes y a los empleados, junto con las personas y las comunidades de todo el país para celebrar el mes de junio como el mes de orgullo LGBTQ más Pride, y considerando que Pride es un momento para recordar la adversidad que la comunidad de lesbianas, gays, bisexuales, transexuales, queer y L+ más y LGBTQ más ha vivido y sigue viviendo, y para celebrar los triunfos grandes y pequeños de los individuos que han luchado valientemente y siguen luchando por la plena igualdad, y considerando que la ciudad reconoce la resistencia y la determinación de los muchos individuos que luchan por vivir libre y auténticamente, y que al hacerlo abran corazones y mentes y sienten los bases de un mundo más justo y equitativo y dan esperanza a otros. Y considerando que la ciudad también reconoce que hay que seguir trabajando, que las personas LGBTQ+, y especialmente los jóvenes que desafían las normas de sexo o género, se enfrentan a la intimidación y el acoso y corren un riesgo desproporcionado de herirse a sus mismos y de morir por suicidio, que hay una violencia continua contra las mujeres transgénero de color y que los ancianos LGBTQ+ se enfrentan ahora a un nuevo reto de aislamiento mientras trabajan por envejecer con dignidad, y considerando que es importante y necesario que le recordemos a la comunidad LGBTQ+, que son amados y apreciados, y considerando que la ciudad de River Park celebran la gran diversidad de sus residentes y reafirma la autovaloración y la dignidad de los miembros de nuestra comunidad LGBTQ+, volviendo a comprometerse con los valores de diversidad e inclusión de la ciudad, y considerando que nuestros vecinos LGBTQ+ son una parte diversa, comprometida y vital de nuestra ciudad, contribuyendo a todos los aspectos de la vida de la ciudad como contribuyentes y líderes activos y visibles que hacen que Riverdale Park sea una comunidad más fuerte y vibrante. Y considerando que la ciudad de Riverdale Park es una comunidad acogedora, cuidadosa y segura, un lugar donde sus residentes se esfuerzan por hacer de ella un lugar excepcional, diverso e inclusivo para que todos vivan, aprendan, trabajan, jueguen, formen una familia y envejezcan. Ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Riverdale Park proclaman por el presente el mes de junio como el mes de LGBTQ+ Pride y hacen un llamamiento a todos los miembros de nuestra comunidad para que observen el mes de junio como el mes de LGBTQ+ Pride con programas, ceremonias y actividades apropiadas. Excuse me for stumbling over the letters. Very happy to read and celebrate both of those proclamations. Thank you to staff for providing them. Looks like I get to continue speaking as it's time for the mayor's report. So let me dive in. I have a few not so happy things to discuss, and then some things that I am happy about. So I will start, as I often do, with COVID. We are currently apparently peaking in our infection rate. The hospitals are holding up. There are still people getting sick, people getting hospitalized, and people who are dying from COVID. I believe that 300 people died in the United States today, if the trends continue as they have for the last few days. On the horizon, although not too far away, are new variants, BA4 and BA5. These variants have now been determined to be more infectious than any previously seen, even more infectious than the current common one, BA2.12.1. And they've also been determined to be more threatening to health, more serious, more, as the doctors say, pathogenic. And just as an interesting statistic, when you fly in and out of the country, then you're required to take a COVID test before boarding. And a recent statistic is that 4% of international travelers seeking to fly here tested positive without symptoms. And so there are a lot of people, 1 in 25 of people who are flying anyway, who are sick with COVID right now. Something that's true of these newer variants, BA2.12, BA2.12.1, BA4, BA5, is that there seems to be less and less immunity from one variant to the next. So people who had BA2 back in January seem to not have a lot of immunity to BA2.12.1 and will probably not have much against BA4 and BA5. And this is particularly concerning because the picture on long COVID is starting to come more into focus. I wrote a good bit about that in my Town Crier article that came out recently. Since that article was written, the CDC has come out with information, and they now believe that 20% of those infected with COVID develop some form of long COVID. This is lingering symptoms that can last 6 months or longer. And so it's a disease that we want to avoid. It's a disease we want to avoid getting infected with. And I've seen a particular graphic and a particular way of describing preventing it, which is the Swiss cheese model of protection. You have a whole bunch of layers of Swiss cheese that each have holes in them, but if you put enough of them on top of each other, then the holes cover up and you get protected. And these layers include the things we've been discussing about all along: vaccination, wearing masks, particularly in crowded public places or not well ventilated public places, and the ventilation and filtering of air is very important. Another study that's come out relatively recently, last 4 to 6 weeks, a study in Italy of classrooms, and they found that well-ventilated classrooms, 6 air changes per hour, reduce the chance of cross-infection by 82%. And so ventilation is a very important thing. And something that I plan to discuss with our business owners. I've been invited to meet at the next Riverdale Park Business Association meeting in July, is installation of so-called UVC fixtures in their businesses. We have a program that can help fund that in the businesses. And we have an example in our own train station. And I hope that we can roll that out and make that work and make that widespread and make our businesses in town a safe place to transact business. So that wraps up the situation with COVID for the moment. The next issue is something that I think we've all been watching in the news and trying to understand. And that's the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. I grew up in Austin, Texas, and Uvalde, in terms of distances in Texas, was relatively close. It was only a 2 or 3 hour drive. And the deliberate slaughter of so many innocent school children there is personally just extraordinarily upsetting to me. And I'm having a hard time with it. So many things went wrong during that situation and before that situation actually happened. And there were indications that the shooter had in it. His family knew. He was trying to get these guns for a while. Members of the community knew. He had been threatening to rape and kill his classmates in high school, and no one took any action. As the shooting was going on, many of the police officers did not follow the training that they had taken on active shooter training. There were bad decisions on whether to rush the shooter or not that were made. The shooting went on for more than an hour without police intervention. The protocols that they were supposed to follow were simply not followed. And that is very, very upsetting to me. And so almost immediately, I reached out to discuss this with the town manager and see where we were, where our police department was. I believe that we as a country, and Senator Pinsky brought this up, we as a country have to decide that we want to end these. If we want to end them, we have to decide as a country. But until then, we in Riverdale Park have to make sure that we'll have an appropriate response if one happens here. I believe that there will be discussion of this perhaps under the town manager's report later in the event, but I think that this is something that we have to focus on. And from the reports, the discussions I've been having with the town manager, I think that we are perhaps much better prepared than the Uvalde police were, but perhaps we have more work to do as well. I look forward to continuing that discussion. Moving on to more pleasant topics, as Senator Pinsky mentioned, we have a primary election coming up in July. The election day itself is July 19th. Early voting is July 7th through July 14th. And this is a big election. All three statewide, or excuse me, all four statewide offices, governor, lieutenant governor, comptroller, and attorney general, are open seats in this election. And there's a very vigorous primary campaign open to get all of those seats. There's so many people running for governor. I honestly have trouble tracking all of them myself. U.S. Congress, our new district, we are no longer in Steny Hoyer's district, has an open seat with two very viable, very experienced candidates running for that seat. Our county council seat, because of term limits, we will not have Daniel Glaros back. And so that's an open seat. We again have many viable candidates for that seat. So I'm just suggesting to everyone who's listening and paying attention to start early this year to figure out who you're going to vote for. I'm still deciding myself, still learning about the candidates. And I honestly have met many of them and correspond with them personally. And so I suggest to all residents that you spend some time researching your decision, because the election is coming up quickly. Last but not least, over the weekend, I had a very pleasant event yesterday afternoon, which was I conveyed the thanks of the town and congratulations for the ceremony recognizing 4 Eagle Scouts for having achieved that rank. And I was a Boy Scout many years ago. I didn't get anywhere close to being an Eagle Scout. And seeing the hard work and the dedication and the effort that they put into it, I was very pleased to be able to convey the town's congratulations to these 4 Scouts. And the troop is one that is active in town. And that concludes my report for this evening. And now I will happily hand the microphone over to Town Manager Listician for his report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, members of the community, and the staff team. I have a few items. One, to follow up on the absolute tragedy and the school shooting in Texas. I think we all share the mayor's sadness and concern about this dynamic and that tragedy and the necessary efforts to try to avoid tragedy in the future. I have spoken with Acting Chief Wixons, and our plan is to actually have a work session item next week where the Acting Chief will share with the council and the community the steps that our department has taken to be both properly equipped and trained should they need to respond to an active shooter situation. And so that'll be on the draft agenda for the mayor's review later this week. And next topic, we recently received county approval for the additional funds and the extended schedule for Longfellow Street. So we had asked for more money and that the schedule be extended. We do think that that the project's going to come to completion here shortly, but we needed to go through that formality of time extension in order to get the funds. We have a planting tomorrow evening for the food forest. We rescheduled it from last week, and it's currently scheduled for tomorrow. We have our next TRP walk and talk scheduled for this Saturday at 9:30. Right now, the weather forecast doesn't look great, but this promises to be a very interesting walk and talk. We will plan to start from Riversdale and walk towards 47th, or well, first we'll head down 48th and look at the sidewalk project, and then over to Longfellow and talk about the Longfellow project. And then to 47th, and we'll take a look at future pollinator garden location. And then over to a location of a paper street that runs to Edmonston, the end of Lafayette. And we, right now, we have some guests that we're expecting. Mayor Gant from Edmonston will be joining us. The town administrator, Rod Barnes from Edmonston, will be joining us. The executive director from Riversdale, Maya Davis, will be joining us. Samantha Ferris will also be joining us, and there may actually be some folks from the Historic Society, Riversdale Historic Society. The concept for connecting our town with a pedestrian way there, it's something that I think will, as Councilmember Smith mentioned before, create an opportunity for residents to use the MARC train and to patronize our businesses in the town center. But it also serves as a connection to where Mount Rose once stood, and just a block and a half from where we would be making a connection. So there'll be a good time to lay eyes on the area and to talk about the possibilities for the future. A reminder, and the mayor mentioned this, so perhaps this changes, but the work session is scheduled for next Monday. So we have back-to-back meetings. Town Hall and DPW operations will be closed on June 20th in observation of Juneteenth. Please save the date for the Riverdale Park Sustainability Committee's Tree Summit, which is scheduled for September 10th and currently scheduled from 9 to noon. And it would be an opportunity to network and hands-on demonstration, perhaps as it relates to all things trees. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. What time is the planting tomorrow evening?
Director Chelton, can you help me out on the time?
It begins at 5:30.
Okay, I will do my best to be there if my work will let me sneak away. Are there any questions for the town manager?
That just sounds like a heck of an agenda for a walk and talk. I mean, I like how these things are ramping up. This is exciting. I knew I was coming, but now like I'm excited to participate in this walk and talk. So I'm going to be extra chatty, guys. Just a heads up.
That's great. Okay, give me a second to get back to the agenda. Next item.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, sir. Was your hand up? I didn't see that.
No, I didn't put a hand up. I apologize for that.
Please speak.
Hope you won't hold that against me. Mr. Lustician, on this walk and talk, I was looking at the route. And I know it's within Riverdale Park. Are we also going to be able to have a discussion with the folks from Edmonston regarding the other side of Lafayette that is in Edmonston, of which where the properties on the east side are within the municipality of Riverdale Park, yet the roadway is in Edmonston.
And I think we're all aware.
Because the map doesn't show us going down that way.
No, so we were not going to walk through there. There are issues and there's improvements that need made. I have had some conversations with the town administrator there about the potential for other partnerships and improvements to be made in that area.
Okay.
And I don't think, and I won't speak for Rod, but based on those conversations, I don't think we would be ready to have an in-depth discussion from a staff perspective to share thoughts with the mayor and council. But I do think it's something that needs addressed, sir. We would be looking forward to having that conversation.
Okay. And in a number of months ago, quite a number of months ago, I had brought up a constituent concern about the stop sign at where essentially Taylor and Lafayette and I believe that's 50th Avenue all meet. And the stop sign is in Edmonston, and I had brought up residents' concern about how that's situated, that stop sign is situated, and about whether or not that stop sign could be brought forward by about 20 feet. So then for that vehicle there, it's all the intersections are more visible, especially the 50th Avenue one.
And I have a conversation scheduled with their administrator tomorrow morning.
Okay,
And I'll bring this up with Rod then.
great, thank you.
Any additional council questions for the town manager? Hearing none, seeing no hands up, let's move on to the monthly finance report.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Tonight's finance reports, subject to audit, include revenue and expenditure comparison dating from the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1st, up to May 31st. Also covering the 2 previous months and the 2 previous fiscal years. So in the current fiscal year, for the month of May, revenues totaled $325,000, expenditures total $582,000, giving the town a net of negative $256,000. If we look at the year to date, revenue is totaling $8,439,578. Expenditures total $6,892,615, with a net of $1,546,963. So at this point, with roughly 1 month left in the fiscal year, we look at revenue performing well. We have exceeded the budgeted total, and we expect to receive a significant amount of revenue moving forward, not only in the month of June, but in the months and in 2 months thereafter, we expect to receive additional revenues. We just received word from MuniCap that we will expect to receive the TIF money that will flow back to the town. So we should expect to, we do expect to receive that revenue as well. As far as expenditures are concerned, spending continues to be conservative. We are under budget, currently at 88% of the budgeted amount, and we expect to remain under budget. So overall, as I mentioned before, the town is currently in a favorable financial standing with 1 month left. And we will continue to make note of any of the additional revenues that we expect to receive at the conclusion of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Deputy Director Jones? Councilman Linguo, I see you're unmuted.
No questions.
Okay. This all sounds like good news. So thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Appreciate the report and the careful attention to finances.
Thank you.
I'm going to scan again to see if there are any members of the public. Still don't see any, so let's move on. to the correspondence summary. I have sort of one remark on the correspondence summary. I asked the town manager.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Mr. Yes,
And perhaps I missed it, but is there a motion to
yeah.
accept the finance
Yes.
report?
so I was waiting for Mr. Mayor to hear from that, hence the reason for my mic being unmuted.
Go ahead, Mr. Finance Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I take it you're asking for a motion to adopt the finance report subject to audit.
Yes, that'd be very nice.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the finance report subject to audit.
Seconded.
Motion from Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there any discussion of the motion?
I would just like to echo your sentiments for Mr. Jones and commending him on his presentation and his oversight of these numbers brought to us on a monthly basis.
Fantastic. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq doesn't appear to be here. Councilmember Mejia is not here. She contacted me and is stuck at work. Will try to join us as soon as she can. Councilmember Mayers, as I said earlier, will not be joining us. And with just a little bit of caution, this is a finance item. I will vote aye in order to give it 4 affirmative votes. So the motion passes 4-0. Maybe I should start putting motion to adopt under as a subheading under monthly finance on the agenda, so I remember that. Correspondence summary. So there are many items on here. Looking for the one.
Mr. Mayor, if you're looking for that email
Yes,
that had come in, that didn't make it to this. Ms. Barnes is doing some research. And because a first look, it said that the fee was going to be about $6,000 a year for that. And so she's getting some updated numbers, and we wanted to be able to discuss it. So we're going to put that on the next meeting.
that's fine. I'll just mention that I received a letter about the Certified Welcoming Municipalities program for making your city a friendly place for immigrants. And I was going to, I had done some research myself. I hadn't actually seen the fee, but it looked like there was going to be a financial impact. So I was just going to mention this to the council as something to keep an eye on.
And Mr. Mayor, if we have that information next week, we'll share it at that time as well.
Very good. There's no other discussion on the correspondence summary. We can move on the agenda. The fire department, I did not receive a fire department report. Did staff receive one? Okay,
We did not, Mr. Mayor.
very good. So let's move on to council committee and ward reports, starting with Ward 1, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heard a lot from the last month about a few issues in Riverdale Park Station, one which I wrote you, my colleagues on the council, about in terms or in relation to the need to improve safety there. I've spent, a few afternoons in Riverdale Park Station since I've sent the letter to you guys, and I would encourage everyone to do the same if you have a chance. And you'll see what I saw, which was, in the course of an hour, not one vehicle stopping at the stop signs that are there. And just hoping that as we look to spend portion of the budget for road maintenance and improvements, that we can increase the safety there. that growing part of our town. So looking forward to that, and also making sure that there's some issues with tree maintenance that I flagged for you, Mr. Listician, earlier today or yesterday, I can't remember. That I have, and I'm sure the town itself has made a promise to those residents that we would not accept ownership of those roads until the developer has fulfilled every promise that they've made to that community. And I hope that my colleagues on the council will adopt a similar posture as we work towards getting those roads to be our property and our responsibility in our neighborhood. Wanted to address the mayor's comments about the upcoming elections. Similarly, very important. I'm not sure what's in bounds here, but I would just say that Wes Moore has been a personal friend of mine for about 15 years. I think he is an incredible person, and I encourage folks to learn more about him. And then just lastly, there's been some comments from Senator Pinsky and the mayor and others about the issue of gun violence in America. February 12th, 2010, I was leaving a political science club meeting at my undergrad school at University of Alabama at Huntsville. And as I pulled out of the campus, they closed the gate, which I'd never seen closed before in my life, behind my vehicle. And I saw what had to be more police cruisers than I'd ever seen in my life, more than I knew the city of Huntsville had. I mean, it had to be 70 or 80 police cruisers screaming 75, 80 miles an hour down Sparkman Drive in Huntsville to the Shelby building at UAH, where I was in college at the time. By the end of the day, 3 people were dead, 3 others were wounded in a mass shooting that happened on my campus. Again, that was February 12th, 2010, more than a dozen years ago. Nothing has changed since. Nothing in this country. This is still happening. It is the prevalence of it is increasing. Not a day goes by almost in America where there isn't a mass shooting. And this is a choice. We are choosing as citizens in this country to live this way. It's not an accident. It's not something that's a freak occurrence that can't be stopped. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, but it happens here, and it is a choice that we have made, and we continue to make every day that we don't do something. So I'm glad to hear that we are reviewing the policies of our local police department to make sure that we can be helpful in the unfortunate event that such a situation arises in our community here. And I would just encourage everyone to make your voice heard on this issue. The March for Our Lives is happening again this weekend on Saturday downtown in DC. If you have the ability, I hope you'll all attend. Call your members of Congress, the senators Cardin and Van Hollen, our current member of Congress, Steny Hoyer, Anthony Brown, who will be our new member. Well, he won't be our new member of Congress. He'll maybe be doing something else. But we've just got to make sure that something happens here, because since the day that this issue impacted my life personally more than a dozen years ago, nothing has happened. And I carried an M4 carbine every day for 14 months of my life in Afghanistan. That's the same rifle that was used in, well, a variant of the same rifle that was used in Buffalo and Uvalde and so many other mass shootings in this country, including Las Vegas, and unfortunately more than I can name. Those weapons are meant for one purpose, and it's to kill and maim human beings. If you have a chance, I'd encourage you to look up what a NATO 5.56 round, which is the bullet that goes in an M4 or an M16 or an AR-15, what it does to the human body once it strikes flesh and begins to tear apart and maim that flesh, the skin, the body on the outside, the organs on the inside. There is no reason any civilian in this country or in the world needs to carry that weapon. So I hope folks will carry that with you. Look up that information and make your voices heard. And hopefully we can do something to stop this from happening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilmember Fo.
Good evening, everybody. I think as you can tell by topics of conversation this night, it's not been the easiest last month or couple of years or couple of decades to live in this country. So I think I want to try and be positive, but I know that I'm going to bring it down anyways. I think a great place to start is the start of this meeting this evening to hear proclamations on behalf of Juneteenth and Pride. I don't know. For a kid from Saxonburg, Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, predominantly rural, predominantly white, not predominantly white, all white. John is shaking his head because he's probably the only one who knows where Saxonburg is. I take it with quite pride, Mr. Town Manager, that I work for a town and that I live in a town and I have these political ideologies that are represented in the beginning of this meeting. Happy Juneteenth. Honestly, it is a remarkable ascension in this country that African Americans have undertaken, and we have an opportunity to continue to lift up their voices and celebrate them here, as we did when we started this process post George Floyd a couple of years ago, and I'm just proud to be a part of that. Similarly, one of the most remarkable things, I grew up in cornfields. Honestly, I grew up where cattle could occasionally get out in my backyard. Pride celebrations, I know that they're improving in Pittsburgh, but in Butler County, where I'm from, you're more likely to run into racism or homophobia than you are to find celebration. So it is in that vein that I am remarkably proud of those entities that staff put forward. Thank you. Simultaneously, what impacts me most in this dialogue, it seems like we're trying to celebrate something here, right? And across this great country of ours, and dialogue that I hear from my own friends, the singular focus is trans participation in sports. And you see that creeping into legislatures across this country. And it's remarkable to me because I feel uneducated to speak to this dialogue, and that's coming from a teacher. I have had 5 trans students in my classrooms where I teach over the last 10 years, and none of them, coincidentally, were related to athletic domination. Shocking that I haven't encountered that. The way that our states are now trying to encode and codify language that's seeking to ban trans students from participating in sports. It's just the way that this country operates right now is just mind numbing, right? Because when I look at these kids, I don't see physical domination in athletics. I see kids struggling to figure out who it is that they are, taking a risk that ultimately leads to, I mean, these kids today are much more accepting than anything that I saw in my youth. But I see kids that are taking a risk and running into social isolation. And what I say to anybody, and I would encourage anybody here, that if you run into these dialogues about trans participation in athletics, they obviously have never met anyone transitioning. I work with these children who are 12 and 13 years old, and they're trying to figure it out. And the number that is shocking is roughly around a 60% suicide rate. And if you want to have any dialogue of any substance on this issue, that should be where you start and you end, right? That should be where you start and you end. So what I want to say is I am so proud that I live in this community and that we openly celebrate both Juneteenth and Pride. And we try to make our union a little more wholesome by accepting everybody that we possibly can. I don't even want to get into gun control tonight because as a teacher, seeing what's happening in this country is just both revolting, disgusting, and scary. I just want to leave it at Pride and Juneteenth, because when we include everyone, we win, right? That's the life I want. That's why I got into this job. I want to find those people that are struggling, and I want to try and engage them, because here in Riverdale Park, we've got your back. With that being said, I appreciate the time, and I'll yield the rest of it back to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to everybody in attendance this evening virtually. CCAR CDC will be meeting tomorrow evening, starting actually at 6 o'clock, and it'll be an in-person meeting. And so that the board can get a look at the inside of the Sarvis Empowerment Cafe and get an update on how close that is to being opened, and realizing its mission in order to help folks find work and pick up skills so that they can go out into the workplace in the hospitality or in the food prep business and the restaurant business in this area or wherever else, or should they want to start their own business. The board also met this past Saturday with Mr. Corwin Macklin, formerly of the Standards of Excellence for nonprofits. Essentially, it was to go over essentially understanding how a board can develop and evolve, and the steps it wants to ensure that it is taking in order to have a successful evolution. This is one of probably several seminars that the board will be undertaking for in the future. As that comes to light, I'd be happy to pass that on. I am glad to see that the project down at 48th and Longfellow for the stormwater management is moving along, and it'll be a welcomed site for all when it is concluded. I hope also that in the future, we're also able to look at or review the agreement with the properties up along the Sergeant Chris Kyle Court and the stormwater management agreement that was reached with the development of that property, and see if there's a possible way that that can be looked at and improved. I don't see that as something as falling all upon that nonprofit, Troops First Foundation, on their own, and it may be something that would be needed to be looked at some point later on. I hope we can have more discussions on this, as it's been my thought since the agreement that the capacity of the current stormwater management project up there would be eclipsed in a rather short amount of time. And I think that time, if it's not here already, is coming soon. As well, I hope that, as I know it's been brought up to the attention of staff, the grading of what is Lafayette Court can be readjusted so that stormwater now running off and down that street is able to direct more into the stormwater drain there as opposed to the neighbor's property, which is just on the other side, downhill from that, where that stormwater drain is. In regards to other issues over in that area, which I'm glad we're going to be able to see on this walk on Saturday, I hope that we're able to look at and address the the paper road that still exists, i.e. thus then a public right of way that still exists, that is currently partitioned by property fence for a commercial property and a property fence on the other side, which is for a residential property. This is something that I brought up a number of years ago on previous iterations of the public safety walk that we've had. And I hope at this point, along with everything else that we're looking at this time and working on, that this could be brought up as well, and hopefully it can be something that both municipalities can work on together, even though that primarily the public road and the right of way is in our municipality. Regarding what's transpired over these past few weeks, be it in Uvalde, be it in Buffalo, be it in Philadelphia, be it in any number of places that may not make the front page, but it is on some page somewhere, as to a mass shooting, of which we're now averaging, I believe it's 3 mass shootings every 2 days. Along with holding our sympathies for those families who've lost loved ones, communities who've lost loved ones, that we're able to be persistent and be determined in not only promoting safety here in the town of Riverdale Park, but also advocating for safety throughout our county, throughout our state, as well as across the nation. I have a feeling with what's been going on as of late, this is a subject that's not going to get cast aside and atrophied with the passing of time. I think that that cycle is being broken as we speak, and I hope it is. My hope for all who sit on this dais and those who listen and those who are of this community are compelled and follow through on addressing this with any and all public officials that you think would listen. Be that those in Maryland, be that those if you're from somewhere else and you're now moved here, writing back to them as a former resident of that state. I think this is a conversation that just needs to cross state lines, because I think that's one way that we start inching away from being not just one house divided, but it's one house divided, but mending a house that's divided in many ways, and it has to start somewhere. And this is one spot, and there are many others, and I hope there's advocacy for resolving those divisions as well. This one right now, in terms of what's happened with these shootings, is pressing. It's imminent, and it's the one that probably strikes most fear in many young people these days, as they wake up and they just hope to be able to go to school and learn something and be able to come back home and see their family again. With that, I'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Scanning the list, I still do not see Councilmembers Sadiq, Mejia, nor mayors. Wasn't expecting mayors. So let's move on to public comments. Are there any members of the public in attendance who have a comment on non-agenda items and consent agenda items? Seeing none, let's move ahead to the consent agenda. By our rules of order, this is not debated. We simply have a motion, a second, and a vote. Can I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Do a roll call vote immediately. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Any other council members in attendance? Nope. I will abstain. Motion passes 3-0-1. Let's move on now to legislative action items. Item number 1, motion to adopt ordinance 2022-OR-04 regarding, Town of Riverdale Park Property Maintenance Code. May I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Foe, do you wish to speak to provide a summary of the legislation or your reasons for supporting it?
Sure. This is the purpose of enacting a new property maintenance code for the town of Riverdale Park is based upon the International Property Maintenance Code of 2018, with certain revisions and supplementations, repealing certain provisions that become obsolete with the adoption of a new property maintenance code, and generally relating to standards and regulations relating to the maintenance of buildings, conditions, and properties, and the condemnation and demolition of buildings and structures unfit for human occupancy or use in the town of Riverdale Park. This is a practice, Mr. Mayor, of best practice and trying to continuously check ourselves and ensuring that our property maintenance code is up to standards, and I continue to support movement in this direction.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Is there additional council comment on this motion? I will just mention that we have been discussing this particular piece of legislation for years and years, and it is very exciting to finally be here and see it on the agenda for passage. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm excited that we can move forward and have our own independent property maintenance code, independent of the counties, and take action as we see fit. So thank you for the motion and the second to bring this onto the agenda. Any additional council comments or public comments? Hearing none, seeing no unmuted mics, recently unmuted mics, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
I assume that was an aye. Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
And again, out of an abundance of caution, I will vote aye, so it passes 4-0. Move on to item 2. Actually, can we have a staff discussion on items 2, 3, and 4 and then move through? Would that be acceptable?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to share some information. Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. Legislative action items 2, 3, and 4 revolve around extending the grant agreements for Brighter Bright Shepherd's Table and CCAR CDC. These are the 3 nonprofit organizations that we had awarded funds to, some American Rescue Plan Act funds to, in order to assist with their food assistance programs. They have advised us that in order to expend the amount of funds that they were anticipating, they each would need about a month or 2 more. And so these agreements staff is suggesting that these agreements be extended for 2 months in order to allow these organizations to continue doing their food assistance programs using the ARPA funds.
Thank you, Director Shelton. Is there any council discussion before we move into motions and passage? Any concerns? Okay, well, let's move to item 1. May I please have a motion to extend the expiration of a grant agreement with Brighter Bites from June 30th, 2022 to August 31, 2022 to address food insecurity in Riverdale Park related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Is there any discussion of this motion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
And because this is again potentially a financial agreement, I will also vote aye. So the motion passes 4-0. Move on to item 3. May I have please the motion to extend the expiration of the grant agreement with Shepherd's Table from June 30th, 2022 to August 31, 2022 to address food insecurity in Riverdale Park related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there discussion of this motion? Is there public comment? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Sorry. Aye.
And I also vote aye. There are no additional council members. The other 3 are absent. The motion passes 4-0. Item 4, legislative action item 4, motion to extend the expiration of grant agreement with CCAR CDC from June 30th, 2022 to August 31st, 2022 to address food insecurity in Riverdale Park related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Is there any discussion of this motion?
Mr. Mayor, an oversight on my part. I'm going to probably have to keep from voting on this.
Okay, Mr. Town Manager, can we pass this with 3 votes?
I believe we can, Mr. Mayor. It speaks to unbudgeted items,
Okay,
I believe in the charter, and this it is a budgeted item that was previously approved.
okay, very good. Councilmember Foe?
I just wanted to, I understand where Councilman Lingua is coming from because of his representation on the board, but simultaneously, I would not have a problem with him voting on this. CCAR CDC's work is tremendous within our community, and I don't feel this to be a conflict of interest. But if you do, that's fine. I just wanted to offer my opinion on that, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith?
Aye. You got me while I wasn't slurping soup this time.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Abstain.
Thank you. And I vote aye. The motion passes 3-0-1. That brings us to legislative action item number 5. Is there a staff discussion of this before we have a motion?
Director Barnes.
Certainly. Good evening again, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. Staff are seeking direction from the mayor and council regarding a request to sign a joint letter of support for the University of Maryland's Environmental Finance Center. The town recently received a request from Mike Honeyhake, a Sustainable Maryland Program Manager, to sign a joint letter of support for the EFC's application to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to renew their contract to be the university-based EFC for EPA Region 3, which includes Maryland and the other mid-Atlantic states. The information that was included with the email from Mike is listed below. It explains a little bit further what it means for them to renew their contract. We're just simply asking to sign on as a joint to the joint letter of support. It's a Google Doc that they're just asking us to simply include our information and show our support.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Is there council discussion, or does someone want to make the motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Seconded.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Lingua to to sign the letter of support for the University of Maryland's Environmental Finance Center. Is there any discussion of the motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just think it makes imminent sense. This is something that's it's going to help many communities around us. And being that the University of Maryland sits, as we all do, in between two watershed areas, and I mean, I don't know how much more obvious it could be.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Is there additional council comment? I still don't see any members of the public, so as we go to a roll call vote, Councilmember, I'm going to shake things up a little bit. Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Not shaking up for me at all, Mr. Mayor. Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Smith is shaken but not stirred. Aye.
Okay, there are no other council members present except myself. I abstain. The motion passes 3-0-1. Are there any items of unfinished business? Not seeing any hands. Councilmember Lingua is unmuted, but he isn't saying anything.
Well, no, because everything that we were going to be bringing up was under new business, which was the item that you had sent to us earlier about the county bill. So
yes. So that will come under new business. Okay, so let's move on to new business. We have one item on the agenda under new business, public Wi-Fi and solar energy solutions feasibility study. I assume there's a staff presentation on this.
Director Shelton.
That's correct. Yes, good evening again, Mayor and Council. The fiscal year 2023 budget includes $2.1 million of ARPA funds that have been set aside for a substantial infrastructure project. And it has been discussed by the Mayor and Council that perhaps this could be something including installing a Wi-Fi public Wi-Fi area or some other infrastructure project that would help residents walking and moving throughout our city, our town. So the staff has spoken with one of our on-call engineers, Pannoni, about the feasibility of public Wi-Fi and some of these other solar-powered energy solutions infrastructure projects throughout town and where any of these might even be feasible. So this agreement that we are proposing with Pannoni would help town staff understand where public Wi-Fi would be feasible, where the existing infrastructure would allow us to expand and include public Wi-Fi, as well as the other solar energy solutions that are discussed in the agreement, including a solar-powered electric vehicle charging station, solar-powered charging stations for resident devices such as their phones, and solar-powered ATMs. So that is what the feasibility studies will contain. They will respond to us with between at least four to five different sites in which the public Wi-Fi and solar energy solutions would be feasible. Are there any questions about the agreement with Benoni?
So just to be clear, this is ready for adoption this evening. If we want to have a vote and adopt, is that correct?
That is correct.
And this would require 4 votes. For good luck.
I think for good luck, yes, sir, it would. And I would encourage that if there's not 4 votes, then that we would hold until a special meeting or until July.
Okay, very good, thank you. Councilmember Smith, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think this is a great study to do. I hope we can make it happen. I just look at the last sentence here, that the potential locations would consider underserved populations in areas frequently used by pedestrians. And I hope we're giving those things, as we do the study, equal weight, if not greater weight, for the underserved populations. I'd hate to have 4 locations and 3 of them are town center, the retail area around RPS, and somewhere else that is frequently trafficked by people who can afford their own internet, and just 1 or so spaces outside of that, where we're providing this resource that we all know people at this point in the year 2022 really need just to live. So that would be my one comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith.
I would have to concur with that.
Fantastic. So I'm going to make a comment. I believe that Senator Pinsky mentioned this, that there's a lot of potential money for electric vehicle charging stations in the infrastructure bill. And so I would encourage the engineering firm to provide us with as long of a list as they can of places that they think are practical, so that we can have, as they say, shovel-ready projects should that money become available. So that's my only comment on this. So can I have a motion to spend up to $20,054 to pay for a solar energy and Wi-Fi solution with our on-call engineering firm?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Is there council discussion?
Mr. Mayor, could you repeat what the motion is?
A motion to, let me get this. A motion to direct spending up to $20,054 with the town's on-call engineering firm
Okay.
to perform a study to provide locations for solar energy and public Wi-Fi solutions.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Was that a fair summary, Councilmember Foe, Councilmember Smith?
Yes, sir.
For me.
Very good. Okay, there's no council comments. And I don't see any members of the public, but I'll call for public comments just in case there's someone hiding under a staff name. Then I'll go to a roll call vote. And I'll really shake this one up. Councilmember Foe.
You got an eye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Motion passes 4-0. Okay, this brings us into the uncharted section of new business. I sent a text to County Council Member Glaros at 8:40 and haven't heard back. I believe that John was watching the council meeting in real time at the beginning during the senator's presentation, and the bill made some progress. I'm not sure, Mr. Town Manager, do you have knowledge of exactly what state it's in right now?
It's my understanding from,
Excuse me, this is the police accountability bill. Thank you.
yes, and specifically for CB 21, 2022. This is the bill that, based upon the staff analysis, would actually have a direct impact on the town. And then it's the bill, I believe, that the subcommittee of the council focused on. I don't know the particulars because I was trying to keep track of where it was moving. I do believe from Acting Chief Quixons that it passed out of Committee of the Whole on a 10-to-1 vote. And there were a number of amendments. I don't want to guess what they were because I heard different things at different times. But we will work to get the council with those amendments were first thing in the morning, and we can send them out to you all.
Okay. Does the council want to provisionally reauthorize the subcommittee to respond to the amendments? I will confess that having looked over the amendments early this morning, having had a discussion with County Council Member Glaros, then I sent an email reiterating our requests for items that have not been addressed or had apparently not been addressed. And so I didn't step into some of the new amendments that were proposed earlier, that basically giving investigatory powers to some of these boards. But there's a question as to whether we could just reauthorize the subcommittee of myself, Councilmember Lingua, and Councilmember Mayers in order to again address comments to this should the timing require it. Because my understanding is that there's going to be a vote on this before the end of the month. And so it would give us some flexibility if that were done. Council thoughts?
Well, my concern was the time frame. The last time we had what, barely a week. So if we're looking at something that's, a fortnight or greater, I think that's probably possible to be done.
Okay, so would you want to try to schedule a special meeting and have the full council, or would you rather have the subcommittee reauthorized or have the authorization? I guess authorize a subcommittee which might have the same members as the previous one.
I was thinking just more along the subcommittee lines.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion, or would you would you like me to suggest a motion?
I am always open to a good suggestion, as you well know.
Okay.
I'm definitely going suggestion if that one was offered to me as well, Councilman. Good choice.
Make a motion to authorize a subcommittee formed of the mayor, Councilmember Lingua, and Councilmember Mayers, chair of the Police Public Safety Committee, to express opinions on behalf of the full council on the amended version of County Bill. What's the number again? Can you scroll up, please?
County Bill 21.
Thank you. County Bill 021-2022.
Thank you.
Should that be required, or I guess express opinions on behalf of the full council on the bill as amended by the county council on June 6th, on the Committee of the Whole, the County Council on June 6th, 2022. Was that clear enough, Director Barnes?
I can listen back if I have to.
Okay. So can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded.
The motion has been made and seconded to authorize the creation of a subcommittee to speak on behalf of the full council on the newly amended draft of County Bill 021-2022. Any council discussion of this item? Any public comments? I will move to a roll call vote, and I'm just going to go in the normal order this time. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 3-0-1. Next item on my list is the June 13th work session schedule. So I will be single-handedly representing the town of Riverdale Park at MML next Monday. And I am scheduled to have a dinner that starts at 6. And so I was wondering whether the council would rather start the work session a little bit later, say at 7:30, or have it chaired by Vice Mayor Lingua. Is there a thought in either direction?
Ooh, this is a juicy one.
Well, please go ahead, council member. Sink your teeth
No,
into it.
No. It's a work session. I imagine that moving forward would potentially draw. You know what? What's your preference, Mr. Mayor? My preference would be to start at 7 for staff. That's my preference.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just on behalf of the staff team, and it's the same comment I've made at other times. We are here to staff your meeting, whether that, seriously, council member, whether a meeting starts at 7, 7:30, 8, whether it goes to 9 or goes to midnight. We're here to staff your staff meeting. And
That's appreciated.
I appreciate the concern, but that's our role.
All right then, Mr. Mayor, what's your preference?
I really don't. My only concern is whether we'll have a quorum next week, because Councilmember Sadiq will still be out of town, and so with one less.
Is there? I missed it. Is there legislative action that needs to
No,
occur, or is
no,
it just a work session?
It's just a work session, but it's best to have a quorum for a work session so you can discuss the items with a sizable fraction of the council there.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
quick question.
yes.
What does the 27th look like for everybody?
I suspect it's open for me. Let me check my calendar and make sure I'm not.
The reason I'm asking is, I think when we made up this schedule so long ago, I think the underlying supposition was that MML would be held in the final week of June. But being that it got moved up because originally the primary was going to be the 28th.
Yes.
But then it got delayed because of various reasons, which I'm not going to get into, relating to districts and censuses. That kind of throws it back to it being an open date.
I would be fine with it happening on the 27th. It's actually on my calendar and is protected that slot. I automatically have something on the last Monday of each month.
I mean, that seems to allow you to like thoroughly enjoy your dinner party as well.
Well, I I have a lot of new council members and mayors. This is actually a local towns getting together for a sort of Prince George's subset dinner, and there's a lot of new people to meet. And so it would be nice to have the pressure relieved to wolf down my crab cakes quickly. So
27th is fine with me.
27th
next-
is about, what is the 6th? That's about 20 days farther out than I can predict. So it's as good a date as any other.
Yeah, no, I'm there as well. But I only have one job the rest of the summer, and I feel like I can fit it in.
okay, well then, does someone want to make a motion to move the work session from June 13th to June 27th?
Councilman Lingua,
So moved.
seconded.
Is there any council discussion? Are there any public comments? Any public comments or questions on this? Any members of the public? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote, normal order. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 301. The work session is rescheduled. That's fantastic. Thank you for noticing that, Councilmember. Appreciate that.
Very good.
Welcome.
That item brought up another topic. As I mentioned earlier, Councilmember Mejia was stuck at work and unable to join us. So I'd hope that you'll be able to join us by now. My work schedule is getting where I'm on site much more than I have been. And the 7 o'clock time is getting difficult. I can still do it. And I don't want to suggest that we change anything at this time, but would like to think for starting and restarting up in the fall that we might want to ooch it back half an hour. That extra half an hour would buy me a lot of time at work and avoiding the traffic that I think is only going to be getting worse over the months ahead. So just wanted to bring that up as a topic for discussion and thought. And if nobody wants to talk about it right now, that's fine.
I think I don't speak for the group, obviously, but I think if it adds an element of ease to your life, then of course we would, or I would support moving the meeting back. That's it.
Okay.
I would similarly support that. We start bedtime around here for the little one at around 7:15. So it's always a little hectic making the handoff with me and my wife so I can make this meeting by 7. So 7:30 would actually be pretty great for me as well.
Great. Okay. We can discuss at the next work session and in July. That's July legislative. Just so you know. And the last item is I'm not sure of what the absence counts are, but I was wondering if we would like to have a motion to forgive the absences this evening for Councilmember Sadiq, who, as I mentioned, is overseas. And I believe where he is, it is now 3 o'clock in the morning, give or take a little bit. Councilmember Mejia, who was trapped at work, and Councilmember Mayers, who might have been here physically, well, virtually physically, but I think would not have been able to process the discussions and participate. Whether we would want to consider that. Is there such a consideration?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So does someone want to make a formal motion to forgive the absences of Councilmember Sadiq, Mejia, and Mayers?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any council discussion? Any public comments? Roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 301. Are there any other items of new business? That's all I had on my list.
Mr. Mayor. Was I recognized? I'm sorry.
Yes, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a real quick thing. I know that we are in the process of redesigning our town seal, which I'm very excited about and anxious to see the work that they're doing. I'm sure it's going to be great. And then from there, we'll of course have to purchase police uniforms or the patches for the uniforms, badges, all kinds of things with the town seal on them, and that would include business cards. Yeah, I'm keeping everybody on a new business item about business cards. These are the business cards we have currently. I'm sure I probably have the newest ones, but it's acting like I'm in the witness protection program here. I assure you it says Richard Smith. The other side is in Spanish. These are pretty great business cards as business cards go. I don't have any complaints about them. Other than that, they came from which is a Dutch company. And I believe they're actually printed in New Jersey. I have nothing against New Jersey. I married a woman from New Jersey. I've got nothing against the Dutch. Spent time with them in Afghanistan. They're great, very tall people. But neither of those places are like, seriously, look it up. The average height of a Dutch person is like way bigger than an American person. I have no problem with those places other than the fact that they're not Riverdale Park. And in my ward, we have the Union Hall of Teamsters Local 72C, which is the Washington, D.C. Printers Union. They represent all of the unionized printers in the Washington, D.C. area in the DMV. And I know we have in our town code a town statute or regulation, I'm not sure which, but a consideration, shall we say, for preferring local businesses for services, contracts, goods, whatnot, when we have to purchase those things. And I hope we could look towards including local unions as well that are actually the Union Hall in Riverdale Park. It's very important to me as a person that has had to go into that Union Hall and deliver business cards that don't have the what's known as the union bug, the union label on them, which is on any printed article by a union printer. We have these folks in our community. I think it would be great if we could support them. Not just the printers local, which I think is an easy one, but anytime that we have the opportunity to hire union labor generally, specifically or particularly union labor for a union that is headquartered right here in our community. Would love to see us move something on that and hear any opinions on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Foe.
No, I'm completely fine with that. I just wanted to say that the average height of a Dutch man is 6 foot. The average height of a United States male is 5'9". I'm 6'3", so once again, above average.
Very good. Any thoughts on Councilmember Smith's proposal?
No, I absolutely am in support of that. He is a council member that is pushing the envelope on utilization of. Well, I mean, he's a union guy, and I'm a union guy, and I like the ideology behind this. So yes, I'd like to see it, and I'd like to see price comparisons to see. I don't want us to be making, drastically fiscally irresponsible decisions, but if it's in the same ballpark and something that we can play with, then I'm certainly open to that. So,
and I would agree with that, Councilmember Foe. I'm not suggesting that we, make irresponsible decisions to use union labor or local union labor. In my experience as a union guy, union printers are actually usually like cheaper and faster turnaround than the bigger national guys that you can order from online. But if not cheaper, I think the turnaround time would definitely be faster and the price would be competitive, if not actually cheaper.
So staff, can you let us know whether there's a policy that we need to create in order to make this work?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe we need a policy. We still want to bring you the procurement manual draft, and Councilmember Smith and I've talked about whether or not the council would look at having some sort of encouragement to use union shops. The one thing that I would caution the council on is having any sort of product where someone can put their information. It would be like advertising for a different entity. So anything that we would print, I would encourage us not to have someone else's logo on it, unless the council sees fit to change that, because we work real hard and to not advertise for outside entities. We receive requests fairly regular where we can advertise for folks on our website, for example. People say, hey, can you add this? Can you add that? And we work hard to say no, because we have a general prohibition against advertising. But Director Barnes, I know, has been looking for a new printer. And so the conversation is timely. And Director Barnes, do you have anything to add, or do we want to have this on a work session to come back to the council?
Certainly. The timing is ironic because we have just started that process with the closing of Train Printing in Hyattsville. We've actually just started that within the last week or so. I'd be happy to talk more about it at a future work session or at an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, I would just add that I appreciate that flag, Mr. Town Manager. The union label, it's not advertisement. It's not a logo per se. There are many different unions that use the same thing. It just, the only different is tiny. You wouldn't even probably be able to see it on a card, the local number and whatnot. If you go to any town, any state in America, any of our federal representatives on the Hill that respect the importance of organized labor, all of those folks, government entities, have a union label on the business card, the union bug, as we call it. If folks, I had my wallet with you, I can show you my day job card that has it. But I really think that having that on our printed materials, at least on the business cards of members of the council that desire it, it's not just saying where this was made. It's a statement of our values as a community and as a town. And I think that would be very important, and also not at all intrusive on the actual design of the card.
Okay, very good. Well, it sounds like we'll see it at a future work session, maybe the end of the month even. I'll just make a statement that I hope we don't have a difficult multi-dimensional optimization problem with local versus union. If we had a local in-town business that was non-union versus a just out of town union business, but perhaps it won't be that complicated. We can just figure out an order of preference, and it won't be too difficult. Okay, any other items of new business? Very quiet. May I have a motion to adjourn?
You sure can. Mr. Mayor, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. This is neither discussed nor debated, so I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
And I abstain. We are adjourned just barely at 9:27. Have a
Thank
great
you,
evening, everyone.
Good night, all.